Session isn't over, but a plan to expand gaming in Illinois may be. That's up next on Capitol View. Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Capitol View, the show where we talk about Illinois government and politics. I'm your host, Jamey Dunn with Illinois Issues Magazine, and with me today is Mike Lawrence, longtime Statehouse watcher and commentator, Andrew Thomason, Statehouse reporter for Illinois Statehouse News.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me, guys. Well, the big issue this week has been gaming. There have been a lot of incarnations of the gaming bill, but so far none of them have stuck. Drew, can you walk us through a little bit of what's gone down with gaming this week?
Yeah, there's been a couple attempts to, so we're in the second week of fall veto session, and then we're trying to get, the General Assembly is trying to get some form of gaming expanded. There's been a plan in the Senate that's kind of been heard, been talked about, but has never really come up for a vote on the floor. There, in the House side, State Representative Lou Lang has a modified version of what he ran this spring on to expand gaming, and it's a little bit different than what was passed in the spring. He ran that last night, didn't get the votes that he wanted or needed to get that passed. So right now, we're kind of at a standstill. The gaming legislation that has been passed by both the House and the Senate, Governor Quinn has vowed to veto, and it doesn't seem like there's enough votes right now to get anything else passed.
Well, and Representative Lang was looking for a veto-proof majority with this new bill that tightens regulation a little. There would be a few less gaming positions, but it still has slots at the racetracks, which is what Governor Quinn says he's fundamentally opposed to. So Lang ran the bill last night, couldn't get the votes. What's the strategy behind him running this bill when the votes aren't there?
Well, I think he was somewhat surprised that at least the votes for a simple majority weren't there. I guess it's just, part of the reason may be to see where people are on it and know where he has to go from here to get additional votes. It's been very, very difficult to pass a comprehensive gaming bill in Illinois. When it happened last spring, that was the first time that any gaming bill of that size had gotten through the legislature for a long time.
I think people were a little surprised, like, oh, it finally happened this time.
Yeah. It's not easy. I mean, there are people opposed to it, and then when Governor Quinn came out against large chunks of the bill that was passed last spring, in order to try to address Quinn's concerns, when you modify the bill, that takes away votes that were there before. So it's a tough thing. Now, I think there will be a lot of momentum and motivation ultimately, whether it's this year or next spring, to pass some sort of significant gaming bill because Chicago wants a casino. And the mayor of Chicago is a pretty effective politician.
Well, and Representative Lang said that after the vote last night, mark my words, there will someday be a casino in Chicago owned by Chicago. But how difficult is it to get that passed without those downstate votes of the people who are looking for other casinos and possibly Danville, some places downstate, looking for help for especially the ag community and the horse racing community?
But I think it's very tough. I still think that it's probably going to happen some way, and the trade-offs may be for things other than gaming provisions. I mean, it could be trade-offs on other issues. And I'm not flat out saying it's going to happen. To do that would be kind of crazy considering the history. But I still have a sense that we are going to see gaming legislation in Illinois that will include a Chicago casino sooner or later.
Well, Lang's a pretty persistent legislator. This isn't the first time we've seen him bring up a bill to fail, but then bring it up again and again. He's done this with medical marijuana and picked up some votes, so maybe it's a slow and steady wins the race kind of situation, or?
Yeah, it could be, and I think part of the problem here too is that you have video poker that was approved, and that video poker combined with what was included in the bill that passed last spring would really dramatically expand gaming in Illinois. And I think when Governor Quinn took the position he did against the bill that had passed in the spring, it probably did hit home with some legislators, and perhaps they heard from their constituents once that Quinn made a major issue out of some of the aspects that were in the bill.
Well, and video poker was approved as part of the funding for the Capitol bill. It would allow a lot of bars and restaurants across the state to have basically slot machines at their restaurants. A lot of lawmakers aren't thrilled with this plan, but they voted for it for the money, basically. And there were some things in this new gaming bill, that address video poker. Drew, can you speak to that a little bit? Governor Quinn wasn't happy with one provision, so Lang kind of tried to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think was it the opt-in, opt-out that the governor wasn't very happy with? Right now, communities have to opt out of video poker. If a town doesn't want video poker at its bars, it takes a vote, says no thank you, and so the video poker can't be there. I believe Governor Quinn wanted it the opposite. He wanted towns, counties, municipalities to have to hold a vote and say, yes, we want video poker. We want to have that form of gaming here as a way to kind of, instead of making the whole state a video poker state right away, it would be more of an ad hoc up to the communities. And Lang tried to address that in his new and tweaked version. And I think it's, you also need to point out that we're not just talking about new casinos under this. We're talking about the current casinos getting more gaming positions. Like a casino can only have a certain number of blackjack tables under the current law. This would allow those casinos to grow too. So that's another way that we're looking at expanded gaming in the state.
You know, when Governor Quinn said that the legislation last spring passed with what had been done on video poker would make Las Vegas out of Illinois, or turn Illinois into a Las Vegas, that was probably a bit of hyperbole and exaggeration. Not a great bit. I mean, there's no question that that would have expanded gambling in a very, very substantial way in Illinois. And I'm not sure that the public environment is there for that kind of expansion, particularly if the public understands all that would be included in it.
Well, the bill that originally passed last spring is being held up by a procedural move. The intent was to keep Quinn from vetoing it before lawmakers could figure out some kind of compromise. It would go to Quinn now, and what would he do? Does he make a big show out of vetoing it? What happens next with that bill, do you think, Mike?
I'm not sure. It could be held and never go to him, that might be the case. I think if it goes to him, he's going to veto it big time.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little last week that the governor was dealing with some defeats, or I'm sorry, the week before last. And this week he's won some small victories, this gaming bill being one of them. Another, his budget vetoes were not taken up. The deadline is passed, so all of his budget vetoes will remain intact. Mike, can you speak a little bit to how things have changed, looking from the first week of veto session when people were saying, oh, Quinn's really getting kicked around. This week things have changed a little.
Well, he had some modest wins. On gaming, I think he can count that as a win. It may be a temporary victory, but he can count that. And his method for finally paying the regional superintendents was accepted by both houses of the legislature, and those payments will now be made out of a fund that where the state raises the taxes through income taxes, but pays it back to the local government, the personal property replacement tax. And I'm sure local governments are not thrilled about that because it is it's a new way to spend that kind of money. And given the fact that the state has been with delaying payments to local governments, many of them are strapped as it is. Now, this particular legislation isn't going to make a big difference in that fund, but I'm sure there's some concern that now that the fund has been discovered and from their standpoint breached, that there may be more coming.
And you'll see mayors, I've seen them argue that this isn't the state's money, this is our money, and they just administer it for us. So yeah. They really feel kind of slighted by this. But like you said, it's not much. I believe the figure being bantered about is a penny on the dollar. The regional offices of education, to pay those regional superintendents and their employees, it's going to cost about $13 million for retroactively going back to July 1st through the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th of 2012.
Yeah, and that's an important piece of the bill. It only lasts for a year. There's a sunset in a year, so this money will not be automatically taken out of this fund year after year. And there's also another provision to look at maybe cutting some of the regional superintendents. Yeah,
it's one of those committees that looks at how to squeeze some savings out of it. It's going to be, I heard, 11 or 14, I'm not sure the exact number, but they're going to look at maybe combining some of these 40-odd positions, maybe looking at having local schools take up some of these regional superintendents. They certify bus drivers, they inspect new schools, they run background checks on teachers. They do a lot of the things that the state mandates. So there's kind of a question of, should this be a cost to your local school to do this? Should it be the Board of Education and the state paying for that? And that's kind of what this committee is going to look at, and they're going to come back with a recommendation next spring.
And Quinn firmly believes that local governments should pay for this. It's an extra level of administration, and he's saying state money should go to the classroom. So that's kind of the premise of this plan to pay them for now.
I think he proposed that those positions be eliminated.
He did originally, yes.
Yeah, and he didn't get that done in the legislature, and
well, he never really attempted to. He just cut their salaries.
Yeah, well, yeah. Not only cut their salaries, he didn't pay them. And frankly, I think that's disgraceful that that they weren't paid, and they kept working without pay, and now they're going to be paid. But I think it may be a more orderly way to approach this, what you described, Drew, with a committee looking at it. And I think that could be expanded to looking at other parts of the budget and other budget issues, such as which state facilities are going to be closed, and then what happens if they are closed. There just has not been much planning that has gone into much of the budget process.
And speaking about the state facilities, kind of a new plan that emerged today was looking at a longer range plan instead of the governor wanted to close 7 state facilities, lay off about 2,000 workers, because he says, and the General Assembly admits, they didn't give him the money. You can't write paychecks when your balance is 0. So he started the process of closing these 7 state facilities. They're developmentally disabled facilities, mental health hospitals throughout the state. The process has started. Some of the people have even received pink slips up in Tinley Park at that mental health center. 198 people, almost 200 people, have received pink slips saying December 3rd, sorry, but you're fired, you're laid off. And so it was a really compressed timeline to get these facilities closed. Now they're talking about, well, maybe we rushed a little bit. Let's look at a 2.5-year plan to close. I think the number was 4 developmentally disabled, up to 4 developmentally disabled facilities, and 2 or more psychiatric hospitals throughout the state.
Now, one of the problems here is we have a dramatically underfunded community-based system for services, and That's been aggravated by the fact that the state has been delaying payments to a lot of the community groups that serve people who have mental illness and who undergo drug treatment, things like that. So when you talk about shutting these facilities, it's not like the people in the facilities go away or their problems go away. If you shut down facilities and you do not have the community-based services, it's just an invitation to chaos and disaster, and frankly, it's not an exaggeration to say tragedy, human tragedy. And I guess what I was suggesting is that we need in Illinois a plan on dealing with people who have needs that deserve to be attended to, and it may, so that you're making your decisions based not only on the crisis of the moment, you're making decisions based on what is the most effective, efficient, humane way to deliver services to people who have needs.
That's funny that you say that, because I talked to the mayor of Tinley Park today. His name escapes me right now, but he was a legislator down here for 10 months and he retired. And he said the reason he retired was that nothing gets done unless it's a crisis. You don't see any planning. And he was talking about the facility closure, and I was asking him about losing those jobs up there, and he goes, if we have to, as someone who's in government and dealing with budgets, I understand that your back's against the wall and sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But I'm going to stand up and preach against this until we have a plan to move the people that are in this facility, that get treated by this facility, somewhere else so they can find treatment somewhere else. 1,900 people went through the Tinley Park Mental Health Center in the last year. He says we've got to figure out what to do with these people instead of just kind of being like, sorry.
Well, and when Quinn announced this plan, there was a lot of blowback from legislators, people who work for these facilities, families. Lots of folks were a little up in arms about this. They held hearings all over the state. Republican leaders claimed that Republican districts were being unfairly targeted for these closures. They wanted everything on the table instead of Quinn just picking and choosing. So now it looks like maybe we're going to something a little bit more along those lines, a little bit slower, a little bit more calculated decision-making process. But these folks that are saying that they would be okay with this if it were done in a well-planned manner, is this just lip service? A lot of lawmakers don't want to see these facilities leave their districts because they bring jobs.
Yeah, and there's always been that tension, Jamie, where these are jobs, and a lot of them are union jobs, and the unions have been influential in Springfield, at least up until maybe recently, and I think they still are. Influential. Communities don't like it. They don't want to lose jobs. But when you are trying to determine what is in the best interest of taxpayers overall, what is in the best interest of the people served by these facilities, I think you've got to come to the conclusion that we cannot sustain the network we have of state facilities, and also there are solid arguments for moving towards more treatment in the communities. But to shut down facilities without really having a plan is just not a good idea. It's a terrible idea, actually. And when you think about it, it's not only we're not only talking about people who are coming, who would come out of these facilities that are being closed. The Quinn administration not long ago entered into a consent agreement in the federal court that would apply to people with mental illness who are now in nursing homes, and the administration said that in cases where those folks could be treated at the community level, they commit to treating them. So you're not only going to have demands on the community system from people in state facilities, if this actually had gone through, you've also got the consent decree as a factor of people coming out of nursing homes. And we have never, ever adequately funded the community-based mental health system in Illinois. And this would just really put extreme demands on it, and it's hard-pressed to meet the demands today.
Well, a legislative committee, the committee that took up this issue this morning, has voted previously to close the Tinley Park Mental Health Center on the contingency that there would be more options in community care. But that plan never materialized. Is this just something we're going to see happen over and over again?
Well, I hope not. But I mean, history doesn't give you a lot of optimism here. But the state should be committed, in my opinion, and in the opinion of mental health experts, to a community-based system that is adequately funded, adequately supported, and can deal with a wide range of issues that people who have mental illness face. And we need somebody, actually more than one somebody, to step up here, a governor working with the legislature, to once and for all commit to a viable community-based mental health system in Illinois, fully funded drug treatment system, or we're going to see our jails, for example, continue to be crowded. A lot of people in jails have mental illness issues. Prisons, a lot of people in prisons, a quarter of the people perhaps have significant mental health issues. And that's because they're not being dealt with appropriately in the community. And it is costing the state more in the long run to treat people in state facilities and in prisons and in jails. But it would require an investment up front to save the money down the road.
Something that's pretty difficult to do in these tough budget times. Drew, can you speak a little bit to how Quinn has found the money to possibly keep these facilities open a little bit longer? Yeah,
so we talked a little bit earlier about his budgetary vetoes. They were held up. The legislature didn't take them up, so $376 million approximately is floating out there. 276 from delayed Medicaid payments, 89 million from transportation for schools, and the original regional superintendent's money. So they're going to take, the plan as forming is to take part of that money and part of other unappropriated monies, combine them, and use that to keep these 7 facilities, these 2,000 people opened through the end of the fiscal year. That's something that hasn't been approved yet by the legislature, but it seems like talking to people in both chambers, listening to people on both sides of the aisle, it's definitely got some weight and some traction going forward. It's going to require, like I said, action on both the House and the Senate side. And they're planning on being back November 29th, and we'll likely see that come up. And in fact, we'll likely see it come up next Wednesday when the House's House Revenue Committee is back in Springfield to talk about that and various other things.
Well, you noted that the legislature will be returning later this month. We had thought that veto session was over, but it was planned for these 2 weeks. But we found out last night that they will be returning to deal with some issues that they weren't able to finish up during veto. One of them being a business-friendly tax incentive package to try to keep some businesses here in the state. Drew, I know you wrote about this a little this week. Can you kind of lay out what this plan might look like, at least right now?
Sure. Well, kind of the current incarnation of this is CME Group. They have the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and I think the Chicago Board of Trading. They account for a huge chunk of the corporate income tax, 6% by themselves. They say the income tax increase this January It's going to cost them a lot. They've had offers from other states. They won't say who, but they've got offers for really nice incentives, tax incentives to move out of Illinois. So in a bid to keep them here, originally there's a plan to offer them a pretty substantial tax break. Then the Republicans have said that, you know, we're all for rolling back the income tax increase from January as much as anyone else, but we don't want the legislature picking winners and losers. We want to see this applied as a broad sweep, not just to CME, just because they're the big boys in the room who can bang their chest and say, we're going to leave and take our ball with us. So you've kind of seen this original proposal grow. Sears has jumped on there. Sears wants $15 million a year for the next decade in tax breaks. There are tax breaks that will go for research and development. And then another sweetener that's been added to that pot is tripling the earned income tax credit. It's basically a tax break for lower income working class families. So this proposal has just ballooned to what will eventually cost, for a while anyway, $700 million a year. They're looking at funding this, at least initially, through kind of a bureaucratic decoupling, as they like to say, from the federal tax structure. They would save the state, I think, $500-some-odd million the first year, $340 million year two, and then no more. It'd be just kind of a quick boost in the arm for the state. But the argument is, we give these tax breaks to these companies, we'll see them grow, we'll see them add jobs, we'll see more tax revenue. This will eventually become a self-sustaining kind of tax break. That's really fallen flat in the legislature, and that's another issue that we'll likely see come up on November 29th.
Well, and we'll have to leave it at that. Lawmakers will be working in the coming weeks on that issue. I'd like to thank my guests for joining me today. Mike, Lawrence, Andrew Thomason, thank you for coming. I'm your host, Jamey Dunn, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.